In Cameroon, there's this belief that when a woman can't have children, she can go to the river, dig up the clay, and make a doll out of it, a doll that will bear her children. But one woman took this a little too far. She made so many of these dolls that she lost count. So, how did she find out how many kids she had made? Well, let's talk about it today. Welcome to the channel. It was the kind of day where nothing could go wrong. At least that's what Abina thought. It was a Saturday and she had plans to spend the day with friends after work. Little did she know her life would change in a way she never imagined. She worked at a popular restaurant in town, serving food and drinks to customers. Saturdays were always busy, but today was especially packed. Groups of friends catching up, couples on dates, and families enjoying a meal together. The restaurant bustled with activity, and Abana found herself swept up in the energy. She moved from table to table, taking orders, refilling drinks, and making sure everyone was satisfied. As she navigated through the crowded tables, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations. Some customers discussed the latest football scores while others caught up on the week's events. One table, however, held a conversation that piqued Abina's interest. They were talking about an upcoming festival in the village, a celebration filled with music, dancing, and most notably, rituals. One of the women at the table mentioned something about fertility, and Abina couldn't help but eavesdrop. Apparently, the festival was dedicated to a local deity, a being believed to have the power to grant children to those who were unable to conceive. Intrigued, Abina found herself drawn into the conversation. She learned that some women who had struggled with infertility for years had miraculously become pregnant after attending the festival. Skeptical yet hopeful, Abina couldn't help but wonder if there was any truth to these claims. Later that day, as Abina closed up the restaurant, her mind raced with thoughts of the fertility festival. On one hand, she was intrigued by the prospect of having a child. But on the other, she was hesitant to believe in the promises made by the village rituals. She had heard stories of such festivals gone wrong. Women who went missing after participating in such ceremonies, or worse, women who returned home with strange markings and vacant eyes. The legends were enough to give anyone pause. As she walked home that evening, the sounds of the bustling city gradually faded away, replaced by the quiet murmur of the wind through the trees. Her house came into view, a small but cozy structure that had always been a sanctuary for her. Pushing open the door, she stepped inside. The room was dark, illuminated only by the soft glow of the street lamp outside. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she noticed a sudden movement in the corner of her eye. Startled, she turned to see a small clay figure lying on the floor where she had never seen it before. It was a crudely made doll, its surface rough and uneven. But what truly caught Abina's attention was the intense stare of the face. It seemed to be staring directly at her, its eyes boring into hers. Fear clutched at her heart as she realized that the face bore a striking resemblance to her own. Overcome with a sudden sense of dread, she hurried to the bathroom, turning on all the lights, hoping to banish the haunting image of the doll from her mind. But no matter how hard she tried, the eerie figure seemed to be burned into her memory. The day had started off so normally, and now here she was consumed by fear and uncertainty. She tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself it was just a figment of her imagination. But as the night wore on, the unease persisted. Sleep evaded her, and every creak of the house seemed to echo the sinister presence of the doll. By the time the first rays of sunlight peeked through her window, Abina was a picture of exhaustion. The day before, she had been full of energy, but now her usual vigor had been replaced by a heavy lethargy. Despite her weariness, she knew she couldn't stay home. She had to find answers. So she pulled on her clothes and headed out into the town, the mystery of the doll weighing heavily on her mind. Her steps took her to the heart of the city, where the bustling marketplace was coming to life. The vibrant colors of fabrics, the enticing aroma of spices, and the lively chatter of vendors and customers were all a part of the daily symphony of the market. But today, none of it soothed her. She pushed through the crowds, her gaze searching, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to find someone who knew about the festival, someone who could provide answers to the questions that plagued her. Finally, she spotted a group of women gathered around a stall, their voices carrying snippets of information that piqued her interest. With a surge of determination, she made her way through the throng, hoping to glean some insight from their conversation. As she drew closer, she strained to listen, her ears attuned to every word. The women were discussing the upcoming festival, their voices hushed yet urgent. The more she heard, the more uneasy she felt. Tales of past festivals, stories of miraculous occurrences, and whispers of ancient traditions were all part of the narrative that unfolded. Yet amidst their animated conversation, there was an undercurrent of caution, a hint of danger that made her blood run cold. The women spoke of the ritual's power, its ability to transform lives, but also of the risks involved. It was a fine line between hope and peril, and Abina found herself torn, desperate for answers yet afraid of what she might find. With a deep breath, Abina decided to confront her fear head-on. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the circle, her presence momentarily silencing the chatter. The women turned to her, their eyes curious, their expressions unreadable. For a moment, Abina hesitated, unsure of what to say. But then, summoning all her strength, she began to ask questions, seeking information, hoping to uncover the truth. The answers she received, however, only deepened the enigma, leaving her more confused than before. The women spoke cryptically, their words laden with symbolism and tradition. Each answer seemed to open up more questions, each explanation leading to another mystery. Abina felt like she was navigating through a labyrinth, each turn revealing more complexities, each step leading her deeper into the enigma. As the day wore on, the weight of the unknown pressed heavily upon her. The festival loomed in the distance, and with it, the fear of the doll's presence grew. Abina knew she couldn't delay her decision any longer. She had to choose, continue her search for answers, or retreat into the safety of ignorance. With the fate of her peace of mind hanging in the balance, she made her choice. As dusk settled over the horizon, Abina stood before the altar, the clay doll clutched tightly in her hands. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the crackling fire and the rhythmic chanting of the elders. Around her, women stood in a circle, their faces a mix of hope and trepidation. The elder raised his head, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. He looked at Abina, his gaze intense, and in a voice that resonated with power, he began to speak. His words, though cryptic, carried a profound weight, echoing the ancient wisdom of generations past. The ritual was reaching its crescendo, and with it, Abina's fears were reaching a fever pitch. She gripped the doll tighter, her knuckles turning white. The elder approached her, his presence looming. He extended a hand, his fingers gnarled and strong, and beckoned her to step forward. In that moment, Abina felt the weight of countless hopes and dreams pressing down on her. What she did next would not only affect her, but also the women who had placed their faith in the ritual. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and stepped into the circle. The crowd gasped, their eyes wide with anticipation. As the elder touched the doll, a hush fell over the gathering. The silence was deafening, amplifying the intensity of the moment. Then, as if in response to an unseen signal, the ground beneath them trembled. The earth shook, the fire flared, and the chanting reached a fever pitch. In the midst of this turmoil, Abina felt a surge of adrenaline, her heart pounding against her ribs. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the doll in her hands. The moment stretched, each second an eternity, and then it happened. The doll in Abina's hands began to glow, a faint light emanated from its rough surface, growing brighter with every passing moment. The glow enveloped her, washing over her in waves of warmth. Abina gasped, not in fear, but in awe. The crowd, too, seemed to be sharing her wonder, their expressions a mixture of amazement and reverence. As the light intensified, the doll in Abina's hands started to change. The rough clay surface became smoother, the crude features more defined. Before their eyes, the doll was undergoing a remarkable transformation, taking on a lifelike appearance. This was no longer just a doll. It was becoming something else, something real. Abina watched in disbelief as the glow enveloped the doll completely. The crowd held their breath, their gazes unwavering. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow faded. Silence descended, broken only by the crackling fire. Abina slowly lowered her hands, her eyes still wide with wonder, and there, in her hands, was a baby. A tiny human being, perfectly formed, swaddled in a blanket, cooing softly. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the clearing. The ritual had worked, the impossible had become possible. Abina cradled the baby close, tears of joy streaming down her face. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of gratitude, of fulfillment. The journey had been long and arduous, but the result was worth every struggle. As the celebrations reached their peak, Abina couldn't help but look back at the journey that had led her to this moment. She remembered the despair, the loneliness, the endless yearning for a child. And now, holding her precious baby, she felt a surge of hope, of happiness. The festival, once shrouded in mystery and fear, had become a symbol of new beginnings. The ancient rituals, once intimidating, now seemed like a blessing. As the night deepened and the festivities continued, Abina knew that her life had changed forever. The birth of her child, born from the most unexpected of circumstances, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream, even in the face of impossibility. And so, under the starlit sky, surrounded by the joyous crowd, Abina cherished this moment, knowing that this was just the beginning of her story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories from around the world. Your support means everything to us.